Welcome to Security Heroes, a podcast by Athena Security. We share real-life stories to help connect you to real heroes in the security world. I am your host, Lisa Falzone. Warning, the following recording contains potentially disturbing content. Listener discretion advised. So with us today is safety and security expert Bart Womack. Bart is a retired command sergeant major of the 101st Airborne Division who served in the U.S. Army for nearly 3 decades as a professional soldier, earning Legion of Merit, Army Ranger Tab, 2 Bronze Stars, and various other awards. He also served as commandant of the Non-Commissioned Officers Academy. After retiring from Army positions, Bart joined the board of directors for Veterans Media Corporation and served as a producer and show host for the Veterans Channel. He has also leveraged his experience to become a public speaker on situational awareness, safety, and security, which I know our listeners would love to hear his thoughts on. Bart, it's a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you very much, Lisa. I appreciate being here.
So when it comes to bad actors, how much should schools be worrying about insider threats as opposed to outsider threats?
I think they all come from the inside. I mean, there aren't people just down the street committing these attacks. They are on the inside. I'm not sure if they're looking at it that way, but I think they need to start looking at it that way. The result is a mass shooter, but the attack is coming from the inside.
Right.
It's a student who's already, has been there for a while, or they're a former student. They know the building, they know rooms, they know access areas in and out all around the building. They know what a security officer is, if that school happens to have one. They know a lot, and most times they already know who their target is or targets.
So what do you recommend with that information? What do you recommend schools do?
So I don't know if necessarily I think it's the school overall, but it's also, I'd say that the people that are in the school, this is the workplace. So we have students, we have staff, we have faculty, that they are the first line of defense. Because that person that's committing the attack is already on the inside, that's the people they need to kind of pay attention to. So that there's signs or something that is there. A lot of times the attacker they'll make a social media post, or these aren't expert killers. They're not covert operators. So they will make a mistake. They will share something that if we are situationally aware, we have an opportunity to mitigate it.
So I know you said that there's no profile for an insider threat, but what are some commonly overlooked warning signs of insider threats? You kind of just mentioned that, but.
Yeah, I think that, at least from a situational awareness perspective, that if we are observing and listening and reporting everything that we hear, that could lead to something, that's one way to do it, because the person on the inside is going to share something in some way. And I can tell you about an attack where a student I forget his age, I think in 2018, he posted on Julian Edelman's account, who's a Super Bowl player. He posted on his Instagram account that he was going to shoot up a school. Someone was looking at the account. They told Julian Edelman about it. He called his assistant in Boston, who worked with the police department, and they talked to the police department in Michigan, where the school was, to mitigate that attack. So they will tell you if you're paying attention. Now, Julian Edelman didn't see it himself, but someone else saw it and then got in contact with him.
Yeah, you said the key to situational awareness is to listen, not just hear. What's the difference?
Yeah, difference. I'll give you an example. College classroom, 19-year-old sophomores, criminology class. They were into this talking. They got on the subject of guns. And a few people said, well, I have a gun and I have a gun. And one guy says, well, I have a gun. It's in the trunk of my car. Now we have 19-year-old sophomore students in this classroom. We have an adult professor in the classroom. At the end of that class, a 19-year-old went to an adult in the dorm and told him what had happened in the class. He said, well, we were in his class. We're talking about guns. So-and-so said that he had an AK-47 in the trunk of his car. And the student said, it sounded awful, a matter of fact to me. So they went and checked his car. They got about 100 yards from his car. And the student said, I just want you to know before we get to my car, that I have an AK-47 in the trunk of my car. Now, the adult in the classroom, he was just hearing. But this one 19-year-old out of all the students was listening and said, that sounded a matter of fact. But it is this type of precise, verbiage or what people are sharing that you have to pay attention to. Now, in that particular instance, there was no ill will plan. He's supposed to link up with a person the day before, take the gun out to his friend's dad's house who lived in a rural area. The dad had permitted that. He was going to keep the guns out there. They would go out on the weekend and shoot it and then leave them there, in a store locked up area. But the mistake he made was verbalizing that he had it in his car on that day. So we are listening as opposed to just hearing.
Yeah.
Able to mitigate some of these things.
So listening is doing something.
Oh, big time.
Yeah.
They'll tell you if you listen. We just have to pay attention. That's the whole situational awareness part. And now here's one that kind of went awry, if you will. Another college campus, a student hears all these pops. It's like pop, 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 pop. Now to her, it sounded like gunshots. And I'll speed this up. In the end, it ended up being someone popping all these little plastic things. But the police rush over there. They have helicopters flying around and everything because the student called and says there's someone firing a gun on our campus. I'd rather that happen. I'm sure the police were pissed off and they wanted some reimbursement for their fuel. But in the end, it was just plastic. But in her mind, someone was shooting. Yeah. So it can go awry. It's just one instance, but I'd rather that happen than someone be shooting and there's no one making phone calls at all.
Yeah, better be safe than sorry, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So your deep understanding of insider threats comes partially from your experience with an incident that happened 22 years ago with the 101st. Can you talk a bit about that?
Yes. So we were deployed to Kuwait for Operation Iraqi Freedom. That was our intermediate staging base, and we were going to cross the border and go into Iraq. So we were there for probably about 21 days or so. And it's the early morning hours of March 23rd, 2003. I'm sitting at a desk in my tent. I'm right at the end of the table there so I can see the floor. I'm watching Tiger Woods play golf on television. Our ammo just came that day. I'm loading my magazines and I'm also doing bill pay on my computer at the same time. Probably one of the opportunities I had just kind of relax, if you will. So I'm sitting there and I hear the tent flap kind of move, which is to my right. And then it moves again. And then I see these sparks on the floor. And I know it's a grenade, but we're in the land of not quite right. And that's a not quite right grenade where sparks are coming out before it explodes. I get up, run to the back of the tent, wake up the commander, say, we got to get out of here. There's a grenade about to explode. My executive officer is in the tent as well. He's on the other side of the table, so he can see the sparks that are the same thing that I see. Me and the commander run to get out of the tent. I get out and he's not there. In between that time, an explosion happens, grenade goes off, knocks him back in his sleeping area. I hear a gunshot, and I know it's our executive officer being shot. Now, I don't know at the time that the commander has been knocked all the way back to the back of the tent. I pull out my pistol and point it in the direction of the gunshot. I cock it and then realize I don't have any ammunition in it. So the magazine's there, but there's no ammo because I was loading ammo. So I go to our tactical operations center. I get a weapon. I get night vision goggles so I can see. And I come back, try to find both of them, and they're not around. The night kind of moves on. Now we got people coming out of the tents. In between that time, another grenade explodes, another gunshot goes off. So now we're searching our camp for insurgents because who else could have done this except for insurgents? And I had been checking our guard towers to make sure our people were doing all the right things on guard. But still, how in the hell did these insurgents get into our camp? I knew that we had been there for 21 nights. Nothing like this ever happened before. So I think that something had to have changed in this camp. Something happened that wasn't present all those other days. And someone says interpreters came in the night before. Well, bingo, has to be them. Go find them. Mm-hmm. They find the interpreters, scared. They don't know what's going on. After interrogation, they have no idea and they are not responsible. So the search continues for the insurgents. During that time, we were triaging our casualties. There being just mass casualties in the second tent and the same thing in the third tent. The second person that was shot point blank in the back in the second tent when a grenade went off, because when it had already happened, they were up. So a grenade explodes at a 15-degree radius. And because they had already started to get up, a few of them had caught a lot of it, in their torso. One that died later, he died of 83 grenade shrapnel wounds. So our search continues. We get our personnel triage and start to medevac them off the camp to the closest hospital. And we make a call on the radio for accountability of personnel, and then we learn that one person is missing of one of ours, as well as grenades and ammunition, and his name is Hassan Akbar. So now the search turns to looking for Akbar, one of our own soldiers. So I had to tell, our leaders that that's what we're looking for. Of course, he's dressed just like us in our uniform. So I would tell them how they're going to relay those messages down to their subordinates. Of course, we're trying to prevent friendly fire here with everyone with the same uniform on in dark. Our intelligence officer was checking bunkers all night just to see who was in there. But there was one bunker that he hadn't checked, so he walks on that bunker and he holsters his pistol and asks who's in the bunker. And the response is Sergeant Akbar. And that's when he takes Akbar down. That's when he takes Akbar down. That's when we apprehend him.
Okay, got it.
So what I learned, lessons learned from that is that no profession, level of education, ideology, or religion is above reproach. There is no profile. The insider threat is closer than you think. Now, obviously, we hold our military in high regard, and I want our public to continue to do that. But they also need to understand that there's rogues in every organization. They need to understand that the people in the armed forces come from society. There's no draft. No one makes them come in. We only get what we kind of get. Also learned that we don't go home with people at night. So 2 years later in the trial, we learned that he had planned to do what he could with his ability to destroy America. And he had written in his diary that is my goal to destroy America. It was my goal as a juvenile, while in school, while in college, destroying America is my greatest goal. He had also written that in February, we went to Kuwait in March. He had written in February that I'm not going to do anything here as long as I'm here at Fort Campbell. But as soon as we get to Iraq, I'm going to try to kill as many of them as I possibly can. So because we don't go home with them at night, we have no idea what they're doing, what they're writing in their diary, what their ideology is.
That's crazy. Yeah, it's amazing that they couldn't be picked up beforehand, like in a background check or something like that.
Yeah. Now, so we're talking 2003, and the internet wasn't what it is now. The ability to search and do all kinds of things, even join organizations, wasn't even the same.
Yeah.
So, and not to mention social media, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he didn't have the ability to do that. Of course, that wouldn't have been smart. But
Mm-hmm.
in terms of background check, as long as you don't, he hadn't done anything. I mean, there is a basic background check for you coming to the military, but it's very basic. You're not a felon, et cetera, and a few other things, but it's very basic. But other things you can hide. I mean, you're developing your values, you're developing your ideology, and whatever it ends up being, being radicalized Islamic extremists.
Mm-hmm.
To us, we can't look at a name and think that you're, a radicalized extremist. It doesn't work like that. So that's profiling, right?
Right.
So we don't know. Actually, that was one of the major lessons is that I took away from this is that we don't go home with people at night. So you really don't know what they're doing. You can bring anything out to work every day. You put on that face, you put on your clothes, and if you don't say the wrong things, then it's very hard to know.
Yeah. Was he part of the Taliban?
No.
Okay.
Born and raised in Los Angeles, graduated from Cal Berkeley with an engineering degree.
Yeah. But so he was an Islamic extremist that just wanted to kill America. So, yeah, I mean, kind of similar to the 9/11 stories, right? With those terrorists.
Yeah. Yeah.
But they were like pilots and went to pilot school in America.
Yeah. I mean, obviously a very strategic plan. Now they're part of a terrorist organization. Our attacker was not part of a terrorist organization. So he was so far ahead of the trend, if you will, in that he was a lone actor. No one said the word lone actor in 2003. They've only begun to say lone actor probably 10 years ago.
Right.
Where he wasn't a part of a foreign terrorist organization. Now we know nowadays that you don't have to be. Anyone can be. This is what I say. Anyone can be radicalized at any time to do anything anywhere. That's why I have that quote about the ideology doesn't matter in reference to the profile.
Well, yeah, like that New Orleans guy, right? Like he was a lone actor and
a lone actor, served in the military.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that there's a correlation there. The only correlation is radicalized extremists. at the
Right.
time that he became a radicalized extremist. So we don't know when these things are happening unless you're very close to it. And if you're situation aware to pick up on one little thing that hints that some person is going on that other side. All you gotta do is listen. If they aren't good enough to hide it,
Hmm.
one little thing puts them on that other side. So an attack happened again in 2009, where a fellow American soldier killed and wounded people at Fort Hood, Texas. He was a radicalized Islamic extremist. Now,
Mm.
he, at work at Walter Reed Army Medical Center, it was said that he had applauded the acts of 911. So people listened to that, but they didn't do anything about it. And then years
Yeah.
later, he missed this attack. Likely inspired and motivated by our attacker because our attacker did it and pulled it off. So 6 years later, this guy did it.
Um, yeah, so I mean, tell us a little bit about the book that you wrote about this experience and who should read it and yeah. A little
But this is my thing about working in this business.
bit.
And it's like, who's your audience? This is what I say about who my audience is. I reverse it. Let me tell you who my audience isn't, and
Mm,
that is anyone who advocates for mass shooting and insider threat attacks. Those people aren't my audience. Everyone else is. So because I mean, if you want these things stopped, then that's the audience, right? We don't want this happening in our schools. We don't want it happening at work, in a workplace. We don't want it happening in places of worship. So they need the message. They need to understand about how you trust. And so I start off with I trust no one because last time I trusted someone who took the same oath that I did to protect the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic, was shooting people in the back and blowing them up.
yeah.
Very hard to trust after that. So, but people trust differently. No, so that's why I say that way. But in terms of the book, it's called Embedded Enemy: The Insider Threat, and I wrote the book because I wanted them to know about this story, even though it happened 22 years ago. Actually, 22 years ago to the date here on Sunday. Um, the story is as relevant today as it was 22 years ago because of who the attacker was in terms of him being in the armed forces and being on the inside. So from a national security standpoint, we've seen not just that one, but over and over again, this continue to happen. We got to find a way to mitigate it overall inside our armed forces. Additionally, I put these same strategies that I'm talking to you about inside the book to help people mitigate these type of attacks in their environment.
Hmm.
So that's the reason to buy the book. Again, I think the audience is people that are trying to mitigate these attacks in their environment because I know that these strategies will help them.
Have you found it difficult to adjust to civilian life after retiring?
No, not at all. I would say first and foremost, you have to have a plan. And I had a plan. It was very not a normal plan at all.
Yeah.
I retired in 2006, and there wasn't as much emphasis on transition from the military like there is today. Um, but I had a plan, and
Yeah.
my plan, and I'd already started working on my plan before I retired from the military, even though I didn't know when I was going to retire. And that I went to Hollywood to work as an actor and military technical advisor. So I already knew I was going to do that.
Hmm.
So when I had my what they call terminal leave time and getting out, which meant I didn't have to go to work, it's kind of like using up your vacation time.
Right.
During that time, went out to Hollywood, got my headshot, started taking some classes and all that type of stuff. So when I did finally, when I finally took off the uniform, then I just went right straight into that. But
Nice.
I had a plan.
Yeah.
So um, at the end of the day, you have to have a plan. So if you
Totally.
plan, just like with anything else, plan to fail if you don't have one. That's probably the hardest part coming out of that. Now, I was a senior person versus, some other ranks. It's a little bit different in that you're coming to the military, everything's taken care of. I would say
Mhm.
people, I said, look, you can join the military while you're trying to figure out what you want to do in life is a great place to hide. And I don't mean like the attackers hide. I mean in that
Yeah.
you have a job, you're going to get fed and you have a roof over your head and you can go to college. So you can come up with a very, very strategic plan in the 3 or 4 years of serving your country, but get all those things throughout those 3 or 4 years. So that part's taken care of, and then make your plan of what you want to do when you get out. And if you do it
Mm.
right, you join the military in a field that you can transfer to something that you want to do when you get out. Even if you change your mind about it, you have that one thing.
Yeah, totally. So this has been really great. I'm just really happy to have you on the podcast to share your story. I just think it's such a unique perspective. So in closing, how do you get people to understand the importance of being proactive when it comes to situational awareness and security?
Mm. Well, if you buy the book, those strategies are in there.
Yeah.
So trust no one, observe, listen, report, know your neighbor, listen, don't just hear, and then your gut check. That's going to tell you everything. And then understand as an individual that you're the first line of defense. That attacker is not that they will be attacking, but you're the closest one to it all the time. And for those students, they're the heroes. Got to get
Right.
out of the mindset of tattletelling. They
Yeah.
will ultimately be the hero. It's cool to be the hero.
Yeah, I think this educational system could use a lot. I mean, the students could use a lot more education around like, yeah, it's a good thing to do. So,
Yeah.
um,
In
so
my talk, I kind of
huh?
break it down. In my talks, I break this down and talk about all of it, in a different way. But so they all can understand. There's not a level of school that I can't break it down so they understand. And
Hmm.
I think academic institutions, I think they should embrace it as opposed to being afraid of it. Because preparedness is everything versus we thought we had everything in place, but then we don't.
Yeah,
And technology and the human has to work together.
yeah.
It's not just one versus the
I mean,
other.
recommend students reporting it as anonymously or putting your name to it.
I'm going to say anonymously just because it takes the fear out of reporting away.
Mm-hmm.
Because if their name's attached to it, they're worried about something that could happen, if you will. Um, but I think they have to have a space where they can do it anonymously. And the academic institution know their students better than anybody else in that regard. But I think that's the way to do it. Just it omits this whole thing. I'm snitching. But they
Yeah.
have to hear that it's cool to be the hero. They got to hear that from somebody else. So that's why I need to come into the school and talk to them because they need to hear from someone else. And it's not just the students, the staff and the faculty have to play a role here. I think if the faculty is doing the right thing, well, I'll say the right thing. Some of them are going to have the personnel skills to be able to befriend a student in the right way where they will bring certain things to them.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them just don't have the skills. They're never going to tell Mr. So and so because they didn't have the personnel skills. They're not going to go to him because of that.
Well, how do you prevent a situation like, for example, I went to Stanford and they, since I left, I mean, I had a ton of fun in college and it was just a really great experience. And since I left, they developed this anonymous reporting system where you can report on, different people anonymously. And because of all that, and they've extended it to, obviously not just active shooters, but like anti-bullying, stuff like that. But because of that, because it's one person's point of view anonymously, it's like there's just there's no fun anymore. So how do you prevent a situation like that?
That's a good one. I don't know that you prevent it, Lisa. I think you have to find a way to embrace it and hear it. And they're reporting it to the law enforcement, I guess, on the campus or whomever it is, and they have to make the decision what they're going to investigate and what they aren't.
Right.
What level of the threat that's being talked about, and they have to triage it that way. But I still think that they have to listen to it because it still could be a sign of something that could possibly escalate.
Mm-hmm.
Law enforcement has a triage. So when I get to I think it's always important to report it. And now you've kind of taken it off of you and you putting it in the hands of the person that should be doing something about it.
Right.
And that's as good as it gets. If I can get people to report, that's the thing I need them to do. But you got to report it to the right person. So if you report it to the law enforcement, if you're at a different level of schooling and it's just the resource officer, whatever the title is, to me, they have done their part. But withholding it, now we have a problem.
Yeah. Well, and then you have the other situation. So one of the most recent school shootings in Florida, the guy was investigated by the police beforehand. Are you familiar with this one?
I'm not sure. Go on.
Oh, I mean, the guy was investigated beforehand.
Yeah.
The dad, because the dad was buying the kid weapons, and they didn't catch him. They didn't investigate him thoroughly enough. So it's just kind of
And that's on the law enforcement. So this is what I know about security, and to include since 911,
yeah.
is that costs a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
Costs a lot of money to protect.
Right.
And they will either go way down the road in the investigation or they'll cut it off because it's time and money. And the same thing happened with the Sinai brothers, the Boston Marathon bombers. The older brother had been going back and forth to Yemen, so he was on a watch list of the federal government. And then he stopped his activity. So because he stopped activity, they stopped watching him. And then boom, Boston Marathon bomb.
That's crazy. I didn't know that he was on a watch list.
Because it costs money. It's like, well, he's not doing nothing. We're just spending money and resources. Every time you're out there, it's resources, which ends up being money. And
Yeah.
if he's not doing the same activity that could lead to, being a terrorist like he was before, then stop, then boom.
Right.
They watch, they befriend, then boom, the unthinkable happens.
Right. Yeah, it definitely sounds like a fine line. I mean, definitely something we need to be discussing. So thank you so much for your time. Anything else you want to add?
I guess from a call to action standpoint, you can follow me on LinkedIn. You can go to my website, bartwomack.com. You can also purchase the book from there, and I post on both of those things.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. That's the end of the podcast. Security Heroes is brought to you by Athena Security. To find out more about Athena Security and how we help save lives through our weapon detection solution, visit www.athena-security.com. And then make sure to search for Security Heroes in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts, or anywhere else podcasts are found. Make sure to click subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. On behalf of the team here at Athena, thanks for listening.